Support for this podcast comes from the Central Valley Journalism Collaborative, connecting communities with the resources, infrastructure, and networks to ensure a vibrant local free press.
From KVPR in Fresno, this is Central Valley Daily. It's Tuesday, March 25th. I'm Elizabeth Arkalian. Affordable housing is becoming increasingly hard to find, even in the San Joaquin Valley.
This era that the Central Valley and Fresno County in particular is the affordable place to live, that era is kind of over.
But one place where more of it could be on the way is in Clovis. We'll learn how and why after these news headlines. The state of California has launched a system to notify residents about nearby pesticide use. KVPR's Crescencio Rodriguez Delgado reports on the new system called Spray Days California.
Spray Days California will email and text residents 24 to 48 hours before pesticides and fumigants are used near their homes. It's the first system of its kind in the nation, and it comes after years of advocacy by residents about the harmful effects of pesticides. Gustavo Aguirre is Associate Director for the Kern County-based Center on Race, Poverty, and the Environment. He says the idea came after a smaller project in the community of Shafter.
We are very happy that, finally this project is coming live, and we will celebrate this, and we will continue collaborating between the communities and the state.
The system is designed to track pesticides with the strictest regulations. Residents can look up upcoming sprays near their address on the Spray Days California website. For KVPR News, I'm Crescencio Rodriguez Delgado.
Federal prosecutors announced an immigration sweep that resulted in charges for more than 800 people in the U.S. without legal status. U.S. attorneys in California, Arizona, Texas, and New Mexico brought the charges last week as part of a coordinated operation known as Take Back America. The arrests were focused on immigration law violations, including human smuggling and illegal entry or re-entry into the country. The operation is in line with President Trump's efforts to crack down more heavily on illegal immigration. California is reporting one of the country's highest rates of childhood vaccinations as measles continues to spread across parts of the U.S. An annual report shows more than 95% of the state's kindergartners are vaccinated against measles, mumps, and rubella. Recent measles outbreaks in Texas and other states have raised alarm among health officials who say unvaccinated people are most at risk. California has reported 8 cases of measles this year. 2 of those were in Fresno County after an unvaccinated local acquired the virus abroad. Madera County officials are going after noise complaints. The Board of Supervisors last week voted to issue higher citations and stricter overnight noise rules, according to the Fresno Bee. The changes come after a spike in noise complaints in the county over the last 2 years. Now, noise complaints will carry heftier fines, and there will be no noise allowed between 10 p.m. and 8 a.m. The new county rules will take effect next month.
Raise a glass with KVPR, Sunday afternoon, May 4th, for KVPR's wine tasting and more, featuring fine wines from California and beyond, local craft beer, delicious food, live music, and a silent auction, all on the amazing grounds of the Lester Estate in Fresno, where Van Ness Extension meets the San Joaquin River. All proceeds benefit KVPR, so purchase your tickets today at kvpr.org/wine.
And now to our main story. Despite the San Joaquin Valley's reputation as one of the cheapest places to live in California, affordable housing has become harder and harder to find. But housing stock might be changing, particularly in Clovis. The city ranks as one of the most expensive valley rental markets. However, a settlement in a lawsuit that alleged a lack of affordable housing signals that more options are on the way, though they may take years to build. We brought Fresnoland journalist Pablo Orihuela to the KVPR studios to break down the changing housing landscape in Clovis. He begins by explaining the lawsuit in question, which was brought against the city by a local homeless rights advocate named Des Martinez.
So the court ruling ended up which was ruled in Des Martinez's favor, said that Clovis was engaging in housing laws that were discriminatory toward low-income and people of color. The court ended up deciding that the city wasn't doing enough to increase its stock of affordable housing and, by extension, reverse segregation that a lot of the zoning laws historically have done in that city.
Now, they reached a settlement as well, or?
Correct. So part of that settlement agreement meant that Clovis denies any guilt, but that changes are made and agreed upon to help increase affordable housing stock, rezone to increase housing density, among other policy changes to increase housing stock overall.
Got it. Okay, so last year, the city of Clovis and Des Martinez settled the case, as we said. Where are things right now?
Yeah, so last year there were 6 agreed upon items in that settlement, and all of those items had clear deadlines in the settlement agreement. And the main litigation team that I talked to, which was Central California Legal Services, they told me that their role isn't really an enforcer, but rather a collaborative partner with the city of Clovis. When I talked to the director of that team, Stephanie Hamilton Borchers, she told me that they want to make sure that at the end of the day, their role isn't really to hold the stick and beat the city over, but rather to make sure that they're working collaboratively, because ultimately they just want to increase affordable housing stock. And any way they can do that and be a helpful partner in that way would be ultimately the best way to help people in the valley.
So you report that affordable housing can't just be built anytime. It's because of the way it's funded. It's unique. And you spoke with the local affordable housing developer, Jessica Hoff-Burzak. So what did she have to say? Yeah,
I've been reporting on housing for years now, actually, and I do not begrudge anybody who has a misunderstanding of this world. The rules are labyrinthine. They are at the city level, the state level, the federal level. And, some of the hurdles that people go through, people like Burzak, especially affordable housing developers, are the fact that funding is ultra competitive. State and federal grants are on a application basis. And because these programs are underfunded, that means that, unfortunately, not every application gets approved. So not everybody gets funding. And when that funding comes through, sometimes investors can be a bit fickle. And if projects take a long time to actually break ground, which many of them do, funding can be pulled at any moment. And then you're back to square one.
So in Clovis, was part of the issue that they weren't making a concerted effort to pursue that affordable housing funding?
Yes. So the litigation began because Des and her team argued that the city was failing to comply with state housing law. And among the violations of that housing law was, in the court's mind, not a concerned enough effort to increase affordable housing in the city, as well as to allow for more housing to be built.
Okay. So, and I do want to clarify, because I think the term affordable housing gets tossed around a lot, but what exactly is affordable housing when it comes to like a definition? Is it based on the current average market rate rent in an area, like a person's income could influence whether they qualify? Could you break that down a little bit?
Yeah, so that also has many definitions, and I would say the most common definition for people to understand is affordable housing is dependent on your average median income per area. And so that is a number that is found out by the Department of Housing and Urban Development nationally. And from that, you get multiple levels, such as extremely low income, very low income. And that can start from 80% the median income all the way down to even 30 and 35% median income. And that usually gets decided upon before the building is built. And then some buildings you will see are only for renters that make no more than very low income. And that can be as low as 40% of the area's median income. I believe it for Fresno County was somewhere around $64,000.
Okay. There's been a big shakeup at the federal level, including for HUD. Do we have any idea of how that could potentially be impacting affordable housing applications?
Yeah, I mean, one of the big things that happened earlier this month was there was a memo sent out that said that the emergency housing vouchers were running out of funding quicker than expected. They were expected to run out of funding in 2030, and it looks like this payment coming in the spring is going to be the last one. Now, that was a pandemic-era program, so it was never expected to last forever. Like I said, it was expected to expire at the beginning of the decade. But, people nationally have said that, there's probably no foul play there. The reason for that is just increasing rents. People greatly miscalculated how long it would take for this money to run out.
And California has its own housing crisis across the state. How has that factored into this issue in Clovis?
Yeah, I mean, one thing we like to tell people here is, especially out-of-towners, is this era that the Central Valley and Fresno County in particular is the affordable place to live. That era is kind of over. Not only has rent constantly increased here, but vacancy rates have stayed, in the single digits, if not 5%, comfortably lower.
Wow. Now, Clovis city officials are also taking some other steps to try to create higher density housing in Clovis to address this shortage, right?
Yeah, so one of the items that were agreed upon in the settlement was the changing of their medium density or R3 zoning. It used to allow for only 15 units to be built per acre of land, and that got increased to 20 units. And that change has already been made, and people can already, developers can apply to build housing with that zoning change already made.
That's really interesting. You really have to follow like planning commission level stuff to even know like what a city's zoning is, right?
Of course. I mean, like I said, I do not. Whenever people want to talk about affordable housing, I usually tell them to pull up a chair and we can spend minutes, if not hours, talking about every single check and balance a developer has to go through before they even break ground.
Yeah.
It's a very long and arduous process.
And happens often before we see any sort of facility arise before our eyes. When I covered city council stuff in Turlock many years ago, houses were being built 8 years after they were approved because financial situations can change for developers or they sit on it. It's just an evolving process. So what you're reporting on now, we may not see come to fruition for some time, right?
Absolutely. And, the big thing about getting stuck in this long timeline is things like resources that you need to build the housing might increase. And so now the initial projected budget to build that project might increase in that time. So you have to go back and apply for even more funding. And in the case of the Libre Commons, which is a project that was talked about in that article we referenced, both the city and the county pulled support. And now that project, I will quote Jessica and say that it is likely dead, but, it is still looking for more investors. But it's been now 7 years that project has been on the pipeline.
Wow. And that was Libre Commons was an affordable housing facility that was planned to be built in Old Vic Garden. And then, as you said, the city and the county pulled their funding.
Correct.
Anything else you'd like to add, Pablo?
Like I said earlier, these things take a long time to build. One thing we got while writing this story, some feedback from our readers was, how come no ground has been broken? And I mean, all these changes in the settlement agreement have been reached, and we only really have one housing project that's going to come out of it so far. And it is a senior housing project. It is very much needed. It will increase the housing stock there. But, I talked to CCLS and they say there's no foul play to report. So for anyone that wonders why it's taking so long, that's really just the nature of the beast there. There's no real easy way to get out of this affordable housing crisis.
That was my conversation with Fresno Land housing reporter Pablo Orihuela. If you have a story idea related to housing in your community, we would love to hear from you. Just email podcast@kvpr.org. And that is today's show. Today's episode was produced by Jonathan Linden and KVPR with support from the Central Valley Journalism Collaborative. I'm Elizabeth Arkalian. You can find the latest local news anytime at kvpr.org.
Each morning, it's a new opportunity, a chance to start fresh. Up First from NPR makes each morning an opportunity to learn and to understand. Choose to join the world every morning with Up First, a podcast that hands you everything going on across the globe and down the street, all in 15 minutes or less. Start your day informed and anew with Up First by subscribing wherever you get your podcasts.